Ever wish you could just, like, I don't know, absorb all the really important stuff from a whole pile of reading without actually, like, going through every single page?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing for you today on the deep dive. We're going to cut through all the clutter and get right to the heart of what really matters.
Today we're diving deep into the origins of Wycliffe Bible Translators.
That's right.
And our guide for this journey is going to be excerpts from William Cameron Townsend's own book, Tribes, Tongues, and Translators.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as like your personal briefing on Townsend's motivations. You know, what drove him, the crazy obstacles he had to overcome, and the initial impact of his work and the very beginnings of Wycliffe. We're going right to the source, getting the story straight from the founder himself. So, like, where did this all begin for Townsend? What sparked this whole journey?
Well, it all started really with a pretty, seemingly simple aim: to distribute Bibles in Spanish. He was in Central America, and it was there that he had this crucial insight.
Which was that key realization that kind of shifted his whole focus.
Exactly. It was the realization that while Spanish Bibles were, obviously valuable within a certain context, they were basically useless to the many indigenous tribes in Guatemala who spoke their own distinct languages.
Yeah.
Spanish just wasn't, the language of their hearts and minds, the language they dreamed of.
Right. So it wasn't connecting. That's a pretty powerful realization. And so this understanding leads to his first major achievement, right?
It does. After a lot of effort, in 1931, Townsend completed the translation of the New Testament into Cakchiquel, a Mayan language spoken in Guatemala.
Wow.
This was a groundbreaking first step, like a tangible demonstration that bridging this linguistic gap was actually possible.
Yeah. So he's witnessing the impact this translation is having within this Cakchiquel community. But then when he looks beyond that to the multitude of other tribes, it sounds like he encounters some pretty significant resistance.
Oh, absolutely. The book excerpts really shine a light on the dismissive attitudes that he had to face. Even close friends questioned the value of his efforts towards these indigenous groups, especially those in remote areas like the Amazon.
So, like, what were some of the core arguments against his work?
Well, some of his friends were quite blunt, saying things like Indians aren't worth it.
Wow.
There was this prevailing sentiment that these communities were somehow less important, or that the effort to understand their languages and translate the Bible for them was a waste of time and resources.
Oh.
Another common objection was the assumption that they can't read anyway.
Right.
Completely ignoring, of course, the fact that they lacked anything to read in their own language.
Right.
The dominant viewpoint among his peers was pretty much, let them learn Spanish. It really underscores the prevailing cultural assumptions of the time.
Yeah. Kind of jarring to hear that perspective today, but it really sets the stage for just how huge the challenge he was taking on was. And it sounds like those concerns escalated even further when he turns his attention to the tribes of the Amazon.
Oh, they definitely did. When Townsend shared his vision of reaching even the smaller, more isolated groups in the Amazon, his friends voiced even more serious alarms. One experienced missionary even gave him stark warnings about the very real physical dangers involved.
Oh, wow. So like jungle sickness, getting lost. What kind of threats were they envisioning?
Well, they were actually a lot more immediate than that. The primary fear was, they'll kill you.
Oh.
These tribes were often perceived as hostile, with widespread stories about their use of spears, bows, arrows against outsiders,
Right.
and even amongst themselves. Beyond that, the very real dangers of the jungle itself were emphasized.
Okay.
The constant threat of malaria, canoes capsizing in unpredictable rapids, the potential of being stranded without supplies, sometimes a month's journey from any form of assistance. The stark advice he got was basically, forget the other tribes. Stay with the Cakchiquels.
Yeah, so it paints a pretty stark picture of the obstacles that he's up against. So in the face of all this negativity and these tangible dangers, what was that driving force that kept him going?
Well, it was in this environment of doubt and risk that Matthew 18:1 and 11 to 12, the parable of the lost sheep, became his unwavering anchor. Townsend recounts how this particular verse just resonated deeply with him and became his guiding principle.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit. What was it about that specific passage that had such a profound impact on him?
Well, the central message of the parable, leaving the 99 to actively search for the one lost sheep, it really struck a powerful chord. He saw the one lost sheep as representing these Bibleless tribes,
Right.
The communities that had absolutely no access to Scripture in a language that they could truly understand. His focus wasn't on the size or perceived importance of a group, but on the inherent value of each individual and their right to hear the message in their own tongue. This really reframed his entire perspective.
And this wasn't just a personal conviction that burned within him, right? It seems it ignited a similar passion in others as well.
Absolutely. Townsend's steadfast commitment to this vision, fueled by this verse, had a remarkable effect. He mentions that an astounding 4,000 young men and women ultimately joined his cause, inspired by this very same desire to reach these lost sheep. It really speaks volumes about the power of a clear and compelling vision.
Wow, that's incredible. So, from one man's deep conviction to a movement of thousands. So this growing momentum eventually leads to the formal establishment of Wycliffe Bible Translators.
Right.
Why the name Wycliffe?
Well, the name is a direct and deliberate tribute to John Wycliffe. He was that pivotal 14th century English theologian who spearheaded the first complete translation of the Bible into English. Townsend saw a clear parallel between Wycliffe's groundbreaking work in making Scripture accessible to the English-speaking people and his own mission to reach those who didn't have the Bible in the language that spoke to their hearts. It's a pretty powerful symbolic link.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like connecting to that historical figure who championed the same fundamental cause centuries earlier. Now, Wycliffe wasn't just solely focused on, the act of translation itself, right? It had a more comprehensive structure.
Exactly. Townsend understood that translation couldn't occur in isolation. He describes two essential branches within the organization. The first was, of course, dedicated to the core task of linguistics and translation among the various tribes, bringing them the word in their own language. But equally crucial was the second branch, the support personnel. This encompassed, a wide array of roles. Teachers to promote literacy, administrative staff, pilots to overcome these formidable geographical barriers, mechanics to maintain the aircraft, printers, doctors, nurses, accountants, essentially all the vital functions needed to create and sustain the infrastructure to effectively support the translators working directly in the field.
Wow. So it's like a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Of diverse skills and just like unwavering dedication, all, pointing toward this one central goal.
He stressed that this diverse support system was absolutely indispensable.
Yeah. And what were the fundamental tools and approaches that they employed in this work?
Well, Townsend clearly articulates their core tools. The principles of linguistics and the power of the word itself, all applied with genuine love and a spirit of selfless service to all people without any form of discrimination. Linguistics, the scientific study of language, provided the methodology for systematically understanding and documenting these previously unwritten languages. And the word, naturally, was the transformative content that they were diligently working to translate and share.
Okay, so they're equipped with the scientific understanding of language and the core message they want to convey. What kind of impact did they begin to witness in those early years of their work?
Well, the book excerpts paint a pretty vivid picture of significant and multifaceted transformation. Geographically, the introduction of airplanes and shortwave radios literally began to shrink the immense distances. They overcame the isolation that had historically kept these tribes, completely out of reach.
Yeah, before you'd have to trek for weeks.
Exactly. Intellectually, the development and practical application of descriptive linguistics was a pivotal breakthrough. Think of descriptive linguistics as like the meticulous process of scientifically dissecting a language. Its unique sounds, its grammatical structure, the way its words form meaning,
right,
all without imposing, pre-existing European frameworks. This allowed them to understand these languages from the speaker's own perspective, which was absolutely crucial for producing accurate and culturally relevant translations.
Right.
Rather than just, trying to force these languages into a foreign mold.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a monumental achievement in itself, but beyond just increased physical access and the development of literacy, did they observe any broader societal changes within these communities?
Absolutely. Townsend recounts a notable decline in harmful practices like witchcraft and intertribal killings.
Wow.
Alongside a decrease in superstition, ignorance, pervasive fear, and the prevalence of certain diseases.
It's like removing those blinders almost.
And simultaneously, they witnessed a rise in literacy rates, increased access to modern medicine, and greater interaction with the wider world. bringing new opportunities and broader perspectives. He emphasizes that tribes who had previously been marginalized, existing entirely outside the mainstream of their respective nations in regions like southern Mexico, the Amazon, and even Australia, were undergoing this remarkable shift in their social fabric.
So it's far more than just like a religious transformation. It's a holistic upliftment that's touching many aspects of these communities' lives.
Exactly, yeah.
But Townsend also makes it clear that the work is far from over, right?
Yeah, he definitely does. He underscores the continued urgency of the mission, noting that at the time that he was writing, there were still an estimated 3,000 more tribes around the world who didn't have the Bible in their own languages.
Like 3,000.
3,000. And he emphasizes the significant and often lengthy time commitment involved in each individual translation project,
Right.
which can range from 5 to 25 years or even longer.
Wow.
Requiring not only the dedicated expertise of linguists, but also the vital collaboration of, knowledgeable tribal informants.
Right, right. So that's a huge long-term commitment for each language group. And he also draws a connection between this work and the prevailing kind of political and spiritual climate of the time. What's the link he identifies?
Well, politically, he observes this growing global awareness and attention towards previously neglected countries and marginalized tribes.
Right.
Spiritually, he suggests that this particular period in history might actually represent a unique window of opportunity for these long-overlooked groups. He draws a parallel to the parable in Luke 14 of the Great Supper, where after the initial invitees decline, the host instructs his servants to go out into the streets and lanes, and then even to the country trails, to invite others.
Right.
Townsend sees a potential parallel here, suggesting that this could be that opportune moment for these remote tribes who have never before had the chance to hear the gospel message, to finally receive that invitation. Imagine these communities being completely cut off, like islands in this vast jungle. And suddenly these technologies are acting like bridges, connecting them to the outside world in ways that were unimaginable before.
That's a really cool analogy. So he perceives a sense of like divine timing aligning with this push to reach these remaining tribes. Now, what are the fundamental theological principles that kind of underpin this entire mission for Townsend?
Well, Townsend points to two core biblical mandates that drive this work. The first is the Great Commission, that clear directive in the New Testament for followers of Jesus to go and make disciples of all nations.
Right.
He views translating the Bible into people's heart languages as an absolutely essential step in fulfilling this global commission.
Yeah.
The second is that powerful prophetic vision described in Revelation 7:9.
And remind us of the essence of that verse.
It portrays a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. This inspiring vision of this vast, multi-ethnic, multilingual, redeemed community really powerfully underscores this fundamental belief that people from every single language group should have the opportunity to be part of this multitude. The core conviction here is that individuals need to hear the message of God's love and salvation in a language that they truly understand in order to embrace it and be included in this vision.
It all circles back to that fundamental principle of accessibility and genuine understanding.
Exactly.
And Townsend concludes his account with a direct call to action, doesn't he?
He does. He ends with this passionate, heartfelt appeal, urging others to join this critical mission of reaching every tribe and language group with the translated word. He reiterates his unwavering confidence and deep faith that despite the significant obstacles that may remain, this divinely inspired task can and will ultimately be completed. He's clearly a man who is profoundly convinced of the immense importance and the ultimate attainability of this global goal.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into William Cameron Townsend's early work and the foundational years of Wycliffe Bible Translators, I think we've really explored his steadfast conviction. The immense skepticism and very real dangers that he and his early supporters face, the absolutely pivotal role of linguistic understanding in breaking down communication barriers, and the profound and multifaceted impact this work began to have on previously isolated communities across the globe.
It really is a powerful illustration of the dedication required to bridge these significant cultural and linguistic divides, and the truly transformative potential of making knowledge and understanding accessible to all.
Absolutely. I mean, considering the immense dedication and resources required for this undertaking, what does it tell us, do you think, about the fundamental value placed on cross-cultural communication and the preservation of diverse languages, even when we look beyond the specific religious objectives that were being pursued here?
Yeah,
It's certainly a compelling question to consider.
it is.
Well, thanks for joining us for this insightful deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time.
See you then.